Hey everybody, happy Blockheads Wednesday. This week is block 19 of group 2 of Blockheads 5, and our featured designer this week is Sarah Thomas of SARIDITTY, and she's got a great foundation paper piece block for us this week. The whole block is foundation paper piece, not just this center star, but it comes together really quickly, and it gives a really great effect. This is so fun with a proper 5-point star in the center, and you can really only get that with either applique like we had last week or with foundation paper piecing. So this is just another opportunity to do a proper 5-point star for our star themed blocks. So here is my finished block. I love how it turned out, and I can't wait to see everyone else's take on center star this week. So let's go ahead and dive into the pattern and take a look at our templates and our instructions and get started sewing. Our black and white diagram this week has 3 colors, but I've decided to use 4 prints for my block. So I'm going to use this yellow print for the center star, and then I'll use this dark print for the outer star that kind of surrounds it. Now in the black and white diagram, these kind of corners here are in the same print as the inner star, but I'm going to use this fun print from Denim and Daisies for that one. And then my outer corners, I'm going to use this really pretty eyelet. Now remember, when we're paper piecing, this diagram, this letter diagram on the first page of your pattern is what your block will look like with the fabric side up. But as we build our paper pieced block, we're really going to be looking at the reverse of our block. So the diagram is going to look different on the next page. So here, this is the lettering as it appears with the paper side up. So you can see it's in reverse of what it is here on the front page. Let's take a quick look at the overall construction of this block. We're going to have a center block that is kind of on point, and that is going to be our star. And then we have 2 identical corner pieces that we're going to sew to that center unit, and then 2 more identical larger corner pieces that will sew to that strip. So that's how we're going to build out the block. Now let's take a look at the templates themselves. In your pattern, you'll see one page has the ABC units for that center star, and the instructions will tell you print 1 copy. You just need 1 copy of this page. Don't forget, when you print your paper templates, that you want to make sure that you print at 100% or actual size, not fit to size, and then check your gauge. This should measure exactly 1 inch after printing. That's how you know that your pattern printed correctly and you'll have the right size templates. Then for this page with the D and E units, you're going to want to print 2 copies of this because they're going to be identical, and that's going to be the 2 smaller corner units, and then these are the 2 larger corner units. So don't forget to print 2 copies of this one, and the numbering is the same, so don't let that throw you. Instead of it being completely different, you're just going to have 2 of the same for each of these corners. I've walked through paper piecing in a couple of previous videos, so I'm going to link those in the video description below. So if you need a little bit more of a detailed tutorial, be sure to check out those videos. I walk through paper piecing step by step and give you a lot more of a detailed tutorial in some of my earlier Blockheads videos. For this one, I'm just going to go through and give you the highlights. I will go through the construction step by step, but I won't go into as much detail. So I'm going to start by doing the templates, the ABC Center Star templates. And, once I print out my templates, you just rough cut around them. Remember, the dotted line is going to be your seam allowance line. So we're going to, once we've finished completing this template shape, we're going to trim to that dotted line. And then the solid lines are our stitching lines. So I'll start by getting my A1 fabric. I'm going to place it wrong side to the wrong side of the paper template. And I'm going to use just a little bit of my my Sewline fabric glue to glue that fabric to my paper template and hold it in place while I add the next piece of fabric and stitch it down. Okay, here's my A1 fabric square. I'm going to lay that wrong side up, and I'm going to put just a little dab of glue on the back of my template where my shaded A is. And then I'll adhere my template to my fabric like this. I know because I've got a little bit oversized fabric, it's going to overlap all the sections by at least 1/4 of an inch. So my seam allowance will be good there. And now I can take my A2 fabric, I'm going to place it right sides together with this A1 square, and I'll stitch along this line. Okay, here's my A2 rectangle, and I've got it right sides together, and I have made sure that it overlaps this stitching line by about 1/4 of an inch, so that after I stitch and press it out, I'll have my seam allowance intact. So now I'm going to take this to my sewing machine. I've shortened my stitch length, and I will stitch along this line and secure my A2 fabric. And then I will trim that seam allowance and press my A2 fabric out. Okay, I've stitched my A2 piece down, and I'm going to snip the thread here on the top. I like to snip my threads as I go. And then I'm going to fold this paper template back. I've got my ruler here, and I will trim away to a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like to use this little Fiskars rotary cutter instead of my bigger one for cutting, for trimming away my seams. Perfect. Now I've got the perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. I will press this out with my hot dry iron. Remember, don't use steam here because we've got our paper template. And then I'll be ready to add my A3 piece. You can see what it looks like now that I've pressed out my A2 piece. And I'm ready to add my A3 rectangle. So I'm going to want to have my seam allowance crossing over into the A3 section. So I will align my fabric this way. Make sure the edge of my fabric is over into A3 by just 1/4 inch. And I will stitch along this line now and then press out. So sometimes it's helpful to trim away your seam allowance for the next section before you add the fabric on. So I'm ready to add my A3 piece, but I want to make sure that I have this fabric oriented in the right direction so that I will cover this shape. It's sort of large and it's kind of at an angle, and that could be a little bit tricky for lining up. So I went ahead and folded this, my template along here, and I trimmed away my seam allowance. So now I can line up my fabric right sides together on that seam allowance, and I can have a little bit more confidence that when I stitch on this line and press out, that I'm going to cover the whole section plus the seam allowance. I didn't manage to do that the first time, so I had to unpick it, and I'm like, you know what, I'm going to save myself the frustration, and I'm going to do it this way. So even though it looks like this is a really big piece of fabric, because of the shape of this section, it really helps to save some frustration and some unpicking by trimming this seam allowance first and giving yourself that guideline when you're stitching. Okay, my A template is complete. So it's okay that I have a little bit of paper showing there because it's it's past the seam allowance, so I'm good there. So I will wait until I'm done with all of my templates, and then I will trim down to the seam allowance. So I'll put this one aside, and then I've got my B and C templates ready to go, and I'm going to repeat the process, starting with putting down my B1 and C1 fabrics, using a little bit of my fabric glue to adhere those, and then adding my B2 fabrics, my C2 fabrics, and then the B3 and C3. And I'll just keep working my way around until I have completed all of my paper templates. Remember to always go in alphanumeric order. So I'll stitch up all of my templates, my B, C, and then my 2 D and E templates. And then I'll come back and we'll trim them down and assemble our block. Okay, I've finished piecing all of my template units. So now I'm ready to trim these down. And remember, I'm going to trim on this dotted line. So I'll just take my ruler to help me get a straight line. I'll line it up on that dotted line, and I'll use my rotary cutter to trim away. And then I can start assembling my block. Now that all of my pieces are trimmed, I'm ready to start assembling my block. So our seam allowances give us a handy guide as to which pieces to join together in which order. So we'll start with our A and B units. We're going to join those together along this seam line, and then we'll join C to AB to complete our center star. Then we can add the D units and then the E units. To join my units together, I'm going to put them fabric sides together, and I'll line up all the edges of the template, just like that. And then I'll sew along the solid line to join the units. And it's the line that is right there where we have our joining instructions in that seam allowance. So that's the stitching line that we want to use each time that we're adding our units together. Each time I join 2 units together, I'm going to go ahead and remove the paper from the seam allowance, because that's going to make it easier to press open and just remove some of that bulk. Get a head start on removing these papers. So I'll remove the paper from the seam allowance, and then I will press this open. And then I'll be ready to add the next section. So I'll just keep doing this until my block is complete. And here it is, my finished center star block. I love how it turned out. This was really fun to make. I love that 5-point star in the center. It's nice to have a proper star as part of our star blocks. So I went ahead and did an 1/8 of an inch stay stitch all around the edge of my block when I was finished piecing it all together, just because some of these pieces on the ends, the seams, they're a little bit loose, and so it just helps keep them in place. So this is my traditional version, and then I've got my Americana version finished too. And let's see, there we go. There's the right way. And this one was so fun. I really love how it turned out. What a fun block. So again, if you have not seen our previous Blockheads videos where we go through step by step with the paper piecing, check those out. I've linked them in the description below, and those will give you a little bit more of an in-depth tutorial into doing paper piecing. Thank you so much, Sarah, for designing Center Star for us and giving us these great templates. Sarah has fantastic foundation paper piecing templates, so check out her other patterns too. She's a very great pattern writer and has a lot of really fun designs. I hope that you've enjoyed making Center Star this week. We can't wait to see your finished blocks, so be sure to join us on Facebook. Our official Moda Blockheads Facebook group is a very active group with over 73,000 members, so lots of inspiration there, so be sure and join us. Or if you're posting your blocks on Instagram, be sure to use the hashtag ModaBlockheads5. I hope you've enjoyed this week's video. Thanks so much for sewing along with us. Hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.